Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, March 26th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. This weekend, a group of unaccompanied children are expected to arrive at the San Diego Convention Center. It's part of a federal effort to relieve crowding in Border Patrol stations as migrants continue to ask for asylum at the southwest border. KPBS's Max Rivlin-Nadler reports some families are now being flown from Texas to San Diego and being deported without their belongings to Tijuana.
While migrant children are no longer being expelled from the U.S., the vast majority of families are still being removed from the country within hours or days of arrival. Osman Velasquez fled Honduras with his wife and children. They were arrested at the border last week in Texas. After a few days in Border Patrol custody, Velasquez says they were put on a plane and flown to California. Then were walked across the border and left in Tijuana without any of their belongings. Talking to KPBS by phone, he said their rights weren't valued. They couldn't call their family. They were just deported and left elsewhere in Mexico, looking for a place to spend the night. Julia Neusner, a lawyer with the organization Human Rights First, says this practice is increasingly common, as some Mexican states near the Texas border are refusing to take families back from the U.S.
They were not given any information, had no idea they were being returned to Mexico. I asked a couple of the asylum seekers themselves, why do you think they transferred you here? And they said for punishment. They're trying to punish us, which is really heartbreaking.
As of the end of February, the amount of migrants arriving at the border in California has ticked up, but not as dramatically as elsewhere. While there were just under 600 more unaccompanied children in California as compared to last year, there were 6,000 more in just the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. And in California, the amount of families apprehended was even down as compared to last year. Sarah Pierce, a policy analyst with the Migration Policy Institute, says the rapid rise in the amount of children at the southwest border is behind the crowding in Border Patrol facilities.
The number of unaccompanied child migrants arriving in January and February of this year have not yet reached the peaks that we saw in 2014 or 2019. But what did set a record was the increase, the difference between the number of children that arrived in January and the number of children that arrived in February did set a record.
Right now, San Diego Border Patrol stations are not experiencing similar crowding, but that could change as more families are flown here and then deported. In Tijuana, many families are still waiting in El Chaparral Plaza for their chance to claim asylum in the U.S., even as the U.S. sends out audio messages telling them to go home or seek shelter.
La frontera está cerrada.
But for Margie Rosales, who has already camped out for 5 weeks already with her young daughter, there is no home to go to. She says she can't go back to Honduras, and she has no money to pay rent, and the shelters are full. In Tijuana, Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
As eligibility for the COVID-19 vaccine expands, the hunt for vaccines continues. But as KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne shows us, the search may get easier as community groups step in to help each other.
As more and more people become eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine, the question on how to secure a vaccine appointment still stands. This has some people turning to social media. Lena Evans is the administrator of the San Diego Vaccine Hunters Facebook group.
It's heartwarming that, the members are showing their true humanity and helping each other as a community. And every day we have posts in there that say, thank you for this group. I couldn't have done it without you. I just joined yesterday and I already got my first vaccine.
The group has over 4,000 members on Facebook with hundreds of threads with tips, questions, and links, all aimed at helping land a spot for a vaccine.
I'm at Balboa Park, for instance, and not everybody showed up for their appointment, so get down here right away, or information like that, which is really dynamic. And the state just isn't able to provide that type of dynamic, immediate information.
Evans says she feels the group is like an informal partner to the county as they continue to do their part in supplying vaccine appointments. The county says it's continuing to add vaccination sites, but it's dependent on supply. Dr. Christian Ramers of Family Health Centers of San Diego is on the county's clinical vaccine advisory panel.
The supply certainly does help. What happened with this last phase in phase 1C with underlying conditions is a lot of the vaccination sites shifted into actual doctors' offices. So I think the message to the public really should be, talk to your own healthcare provider. Keep in mind there are other venues that you can get vaccinated if you're not able to get an immediate appointment.
Starting Thursday, adults 50 and older will be eligible for COVID vaccines, followed by those 16 and up, eligible on April 15th. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
And if you want to find out more about when it's your turn and where to get your shot, head to kpbs.org. Just go to our homepage and then click on the Vaccines tab to find clinic locations as well as links to make an appointment. More than a year after classrooms first closed, San Diego County school districts are starting to reopen for in-person instruction. KPBS education reporter Joe Hung explains the different reopening strategies in the region's largest districts.
Ashley Lewis is a parent of 2 students at Ocean Beach Elementary School. For the past year, she's been juggling childcare and her own work, but now she finally sees a light at the end of the tunnel. But she knows that doesn't mean things will be going back to normal anytime soon.
In the past, we would all gather together on the blacktop before school and listen to the morning announcements, and all the parents would have their coffee and we would chat. And it was this real center of our community. And now we won't have that.
That said, she's grateful that San Diego Unified School District is starting part-time in-person instruction on April 12th.
It's been more than a year, and I just can't wait for them to get back.
All San Diego Unified Schools will offer 3 hours of in-person instruction per day. Students will be on campus either 2 or 4 days each week. Elementary students will be able to stay on campus for another 2 hours each day to work independently. Middle and high schoolers can stay for 1 extra hour. Richard Barrera is the president of the San Diego Unified School Board.
Everybody will be wearing masks, and we've got all the masks, all the PPE. We've gone through and improved the ventilation in all of our classrooms, which is, maybe the most important strategy because we know that, COVID is an air-based virus.
How many days per week students can be on campus will depend on the physical distancing rules and on the number of students who want to come back. Per the district's agreement with the teachers union, students will be required to sit 6 feet apart. This despite new guidance issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention last week that allows for 3 feet of distancing in elementary classrooms. As of now, the district is sticking to 6 feet. But it will drop the requirement to 5 feet in certain situations if it means 1 or 2 additional students can join the classroom. Keisha Borden is the president of the teachers union.
Our biggest concern is safety. And so if a large number of students in a classroom want to return, those students would then be split into 2 groups, and those students could come back 2 days a week. If there's low numbers and the entire class can fit safely in a classroom, then they could come back 4 days.
But Lewis, the Ocean Beach parent, says the district should renegotiate its agreement with the teachers union to allow 3 feet of distancing, especially if it means students can be on campus 4 days a week.
It's very frustrating to me that they can't reevaluate at this point and say, look, the CDC has said this is safe. Why can't we do 3 feet of spacing and let everybody come back who wants to come back for 4 days a week?
While the reopening timelines are different, the majority of school districts in the county have plans that are similar to those at San Diego Unified. Chula Vista Elementary School District, the state's largest K-6 district, is expecting about 60% of its students to come back for in-person instruction starting April 12th. Students will be split into morning and afternoon cohorts, and they'll stay on campus for 2.5 hours each day. Francisco Escobedo is the superintendent at the district.
I would believe that as the situation continues to improve, more parents would want to have their kids go in person, and we'll definitely try to be flexible as long as we have the capacity. We will definitely want the students in an in-person environment.
Escobedo said teachers will try to focus on physical and social activities in the classroom to make up for a year of excessive screen time. As for the next school year, which starts in July, he's hopeful that most students will be back on campus.
I think there might be some families that will still want a distance learning component, and we will definitely, if the demand is there, we will set that up for them. But I would love to have as a robust in-person approach to education as possible.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
And we are tracking the reopening of campuses across San Diego County. Just go to kpbs.org and click on the Tracking COVID-19 tab, then the Schools tab. You'll find a searchable database updated every week so you can see your school's plan. A new report shows the accident that killed 8 Marines and a sailor last summer in the waters off San Clemente Island could have been avoided. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh has details on the investigation into the deadliest AAV incident in Marine Corps history.
The Marines are releasing the command investigation into the amphibious assault vehicle that sank in July. The report cites poor maintenance and inadequate training. The landing craft began taking on water 45 minutes before it finally sank, after a wave washed over the craft. There were no safety boats in the water during the exercise as the AAVs returned from the island to the USS Somerset. Ahead of the release of the report, the Marines fired the commander of the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit. Earlier, the Marines also relieved the commander of Bravo Company and took disciplinary action against 7 other personnel. Originally built in the 1970s, AAVs, or Amtraks, have been set to be replaced for well over a decade. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Mission Trails Regional Park comprises 7,200 acres of some of the most beautiful natural parkland in the city of San Diego. The great hiking attracted Max Lanai there one day last January. It would turn out to be the last day of his life. KPBS reporter John Carroll tells us about how Max's parents are working to make sure what happened to their son never happens again.
If Balboa Park is the jewel of San Diego, the vast Mission Trails Regional Park is the city's diamond in the rough. One thing that makes the park so beautiful is the fact a river runs through it, the San Diego River. So beautiful, and yet here, for hikers, bikers, and anyone else traversing Jackson Crossing, there is danger. On January 29th, an attempt to cross the river turned deadly for 21-year-old Brown University student Max Lanai.
It was his 3rd run at Mission Trails as he was training for an ultramarathon with his brother.
Max was no amateur. He knew what he was doing. But an unusually strong rain and hailstorm had whipped up quickly, leaving Max with a choice. He could either cross the river and get to shelter in his car 5 minutes away, or he could go back the way he came. But that would be 6 miles in a hailstorm, so he decided to cross. All these weeks later, Ben Lanai and Lori Yoler just today received the medical examiner's report, and with it confirmation of what happened to their beloved Max. He drowned.
So he tried to cross, at the crossing, and basically was, kept under the surface by the current in some sort of eddy or whirlpool.
Now Ben Lanai and Lori Yoler are turning their unspeakable grief into action. With the help of the San Diego Foundation, they're raising money to build a beautiful bridge over the crossing.
We're so adamant that something has to be done to make it safer, or someone else is going to face a similar tragedy.
The fact that a bridge is needed here is not news to groups associated with the park. Yoler says the Mission Trails Regional Park Foundation has been pressing for one for at least 10 years.
But they had said there was not enough funding to go forth with the project, and that's why we want to help rectify that situation.
$2 million is what they figure it'll cost. The goal is to have the bridge complete by 3 years from today. You see, this is Max's birthday. He would have been 22.
We're righting a wrong here. We're making sure that no other family will have the same experience.
John Carroll, KPBS News.
And if you would like to help get to that $2 million goal, you can visit bridgeformax.com. It's been a month since the latest collapse at the Mar Bluffs in Encinitas. The San Diego Association of Governments and North County Transit District is getting $10.5 million from the state to complete repairs. The money will make it possible to complete emergency work that will allow the rail line to continue while Sandag looks into permanent solutions to move the tracks away from the bluffs. Over the next few months, crews will install 18 support columns to support the railroad and build a new seawall along the beach. That should be done by July.
The good news is we've got a pretty quiet stretch of weather as we head through this weekend and honestly even into the upcoming week. Now tonight, not a whole lot happening for us, keeping things pretty quiet, clear skies across the area, temperatures falling into the 30s, 40s. Not really too much of a change for us. 50 in Borrego Springs. As you look towards San Diego, 49 is the low, and Mount Laguna, 39. For you, Campo, 36. Once we get into Saturday, what changes? Well, some of that cool factor is really starting to leave, and milder times are upon us. In fact, there's a lot of April warmth building with the next air mass pushing into portions of northern and central California. So we're going to start to trend our way towards that as we head throughout the day. The afternoon filled with plenty of sunshine. I really don't think there's much in the way of cloud cover. Even marine layer is hard to find. So Chula Vista coming in at 71 for the day, 72 in San Diego, Escondido 76. Meanwhile, Borrego Springs hitting the lower 80s. Yeah, there's going to be some April-like sunshine and warmth trending into our area. That means the temperatures are trying to surge. And guess what? Sunday, 5 to 10 degrees above normal as that new air mass works its way on in. So for us, it's a mild trend. Sunday finishing off the weekend in the mid-70s on the coast. We could get a little bit cooler for Monday and Tuesday, but honestly, it's still nice. It's quiet. There's not a whole lot of changes in our forecast here for the next couple of days. You'll note inland locations actually could get towards the upper 80s on Sunday, so very warm. We'll trend back to the lower 80s for Monday and Tuesday, keeping things quiet, pretty comfortable as we go into the start of the work week. The mountains, you're holding on to the 50s, mid-50s for the close of the weekend. We'll go back to the upper 40s by Tuesday, but even this is still a pretty quiet trend for us. And for the deserts, keeping lots of sunshine, maybe approaching 90 degrees for the start of the work week. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
Today, Vice President Kamala Harris swore into office the latest member of the Biden cabinet.
I, Javier
Becerra,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support and defend
the
Constitution of the United States.
Former California Attorney General Javier Becerra took the oath to become the Health and Human Services Secretary. He is the first Latino to lead the department. This week, Governor Gavin Newsom nominated Assemblyman Rob Bonta to be the state's next Attorney General. If confirmed by the legislature as expected, Bonta will be the first Filipino American in that role. An atrocity. That's what President Biden calls the new Republican-backed law in Georgia imposing new voting restrictions. The bill quickly passed both chambers of the state's legislature and was signed by the governor last night. Karen Caifa has more on what it means for voters in other states.
The signing of a sweeping Republican-backed election law by Georgia Governor Brian Kemp sparking concern among voting rights advocates.
We are talking about things that are egregious and that are going to hurt the Georgians that we represent.
The law, among other provisions, adds new voter ID requirements for absentee voting, limits the number of ballot drop boxes, gives the state more power over local election boards, and makes it a crime to give voters standing in line food or water. Georgia Republicans call it the Election Integrity Act.
Ensuring the integrity of the ballot box isn't partisan.
Georgia Democrats call it retaliation after former President Trump's defeat there in November.
If this law was in place during the most recent elections, then we would have had a very different outcome in not just the presidential race, but both of the Senate races that we had in January.
Georgia is not alone. As of last month, the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University counted more than 250 bills aimed at restricting voting introduced in 43 state legislatures. Republicans responding to former President Trump's baseless claims about widespread electoral fraud in his 2020 loss. President Joe Biden has condemned the efforts as un-American.
It's an atrocity. This is nothing but punitive, designed to keep people from voting. You can't provide water for people about to vote. Give me a break.
Senate Democrats and Republicans are currently at odds over federal voting rights legislation that would set baselines for all states. In Washington, Karen Kaifa, KPBS News.
Getting out of jail in California will no longer depend on whether someone can afford it. The state Supreme Court ruled that judges must consider a defendant's ability to pay when they set bail. The decision essentially requires defendants to be freed unless they are deemed too dangerous to be released while awaiting trial.
Bail has to have consequences, meaning that, we don't want to have somebody with a very heinous crime say, I can only afford $500. Is that $500 going to be enough to make sure that they go to court? And that's what the whole purpose of court is public safety, and will they appear in court? The problem we have with bail, sometimes it's meant to be used to be punitive, and we don't want that. That's not what bail is for.
The ruling does leave some questions. The president of the California Public Defenders Association says she wishes the court had clarified who can be detained.
Tonight on the NewsHour, devastating tornadoes take several lives, leaving a path of destruction across the South. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The numbers are moving in the right direction. San Diego County's unemployment rate decreased to 7.2% in February. That is down from 8% the month before, but well above last year's pre-pandemic rate of 3.2%. Between January and February, non-farm employment in the county increased by almost 32,000. Leisure and hospitality added almost 12,800 jobs, with most of those in accommodation and food services. SeaWorld and Legoland have been holding smaller outdoor events for a limited number of visitors, but next week they'll launch much wider reopenings. Mariel Concepcion has more in the Friday Business Report.
Now that San Diego has officially entered the red tier, some of its theme parks like Legoland California Resort and SeaWorld are readying to reopen more of their attractions. None have actually announced a reopening date yet, but as per the regulations, theme parks as well as restaurants and gyms can open more of their offerings at 15% capacity as soon as April 1st. I spoke to a Legoland representative who said they have begun to rehire and retrain employees within COVID-19 safety protocols. For now, the theme park is running its Build and Play Day Fridays, which allows visitors to enjoy some of its outdoor attractions. As per SeaWorld, it has not announced yet when it will open its coasters and rides, but it is kicking off its fireworks show starting this Friday. It's running for 10 days, as well as a new Sesame Street program called R is for Rescue, which features Elmo, Abby Cadabby, some live animals, and it's supposed to be super educational.
Children's author Beverly Clearys, whose stories have been cherished by generations of young people, has died. She wrote dozens of popular books, including the Ramona Quimby series, the Mouse and the Motorcycle trilogy. Stephanie Ilem has a look back at Clearys' life and her legacy.
Beverly Clearys lived a storybook life, creating characters beloved by millions of children and adults around the globe.
The girl said,
it was just work that I enjoyed. I could do it at home, and I didn't have to catch a bus.
In the span of 6 decades, Clearys authored more than 40 books, selling over 91 million copies in 14 different languages. Her first children's book, Henry Huggins, was published in 1950. Inspired by a boy she met working as a librarian in Yakima, Washington.
Henry Huggins was in the 3rd grade. His hair looked like a scrubbing brush, and most of his grown-up front teeth were in.
Her stories capture the lives of middle-class, everyday boys and girls. Her characters so real, they felt like friends. Her humor so irresistible, one had to laugh out loud. 5 years after the release of Henry Huggins, readers fell in love with sassy Ramona Quimby.
If she'd play with her finger paints in the front yard, she wiped her hands on the neighbor's cat.
I was so annoyed with the books in my childhood because children always learn to be better children. And in my experience, they didn't. They just grew. And so I started Ramona, and she has never reformed.
The Ramona series, along with most of Clearys' books, are set in Grant Park. the Portland, Oregon neighborhood where she grew up. Over the years, the famous Klickitat Street became something of a pilgrimage site. Clearys' award-winning stories pioneered the use of emotional realism in kids' literature, capturing childhood's emotional struggles and realizations.
Emotions of children don't change, their life situations change.
Cleary has received countless accolades for her work, including the prestigious Newbery Medal. In 2000, the Library of Congress named her a living legend. And 3 years later, President George W. Bush awarded her the National Medal of Arts. Her birthday, April 12th, has been designated Drop Everything and Read Day. In her memoir, My Own 2 Feet, Cleary recalls life during the Great Depression, eloping with her husband, working as an Army librarian during World War II, and becoming a writer. She also reveals the inspiration behind a lifetime of beloved prose.
And as I wrote, Mother's words came back to me. Make it funny. People always like to read something funny. And keep it simple. The best writing is simple writing.
Funny, simple writing that will be cherished for generations to come.
Cherished indeed. Beverly Cleary was 104 years old. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.